Hey everyone, welcome to Small Farm Living. Guess what it is? It's Christmas in July. I thought I would just throw this palm tree in that I made in the last Just Our Imagination challenge. If you missed that, I will link it in the description box below. But I thought, what better fun way to throw a warm season start of Christmas in July than this little palm tree with sparkly lights? So let's get into craft number one. I found these little tiny salt and pepper shakers at our thrift store. It was marked $3. I got them half price. You can see they're a little bit dirty inside. There's still some pepper in this one. I'm going to get those all washed up and cleaned. And then what I'm going to do is set those aside for a second and show you these little bottle brush trees. I got these at the Dollar Tree. There's like 3 large and 3 smaller ones. I can't remember if I got them at Christmas time or some other time, but I really like the little decorative piece on the glass, but the plain silver I wanted to do something with. So the first thing I'm going to do is just unscrew the bases of these off of the tree. It takes a little bit to get them unscrewed, but they actually do come off. And the little hole in the center of the salt and pepper shakers was just about perfect for this to go in. I did have to push a little hard because it was a little bit tight, but it wasn't bad. I got those stuck in there and it was a little bit loose, so we'll address that here in a little bit. But I'll show you what it looks like just with it on, with nothing else done to it. So you can kind of see what we're doing here. So let's get this taken back apart, and I am going to work on the top portion of the Christmas tree. So let's just get all of these unscrewed first so I can make sure that I have them all fitting in there properly. And I did use 1 large tree and 2 smaller trees, and the wires were just a little bit longer than I wanted on the smaller trees, so I just snipped a little bit of it off with my wire cutters. And then I just wanted to make sure again that all of them fit properly in that center hole of the salt and pepper shakers. So now that we're good, I'm going to pull these back out. Now, the other day I picked up these little gems at the Dollar Tree. One is just strips and the other one is a sheet. And I discovered that two lines of the strip would fit on and just 1 line of the bigger gems would fit. And I was thinking I was going to do 1 and then 2 of the smaller pieces. So I put the larger one on this one, kind of around the center. And they are supposed to come off in a whole strip like this if you've never used them before. For some reason, that piece just ripped off. So I'm just going to cut off the amount that I need for the rest of the way around this shaker lid and get the spacing hopefully right there, and then work my way around. I like these because you can lift them up and adjust them and get them back into the center. They don't stick super bad when you first put them on. So that's what the big gem looks like going around the center. And at first I liked this, but I will tell you I did change it in the end. Now here is the sheet, and I'm just going to cut out 2 rows of the sheet. And then it has a little sticky backing tape, and I'm just going to peel off just enough of this to get going. I know I'm not going to need this whole strip for just this small little lid, so I want to be sure that I keep the paper there. And I'm just going to work my way around the whole way on this one. And I was liking the way the 2 lines of the smaller little gems looked on these shakers. It just gave it a little bit more pizzazz and more sparkle. And that's kind of what I was going for, was a vintagey, sparkly kind of look on these. So once I get it to the other side, I'm just going to cut off the excess. And again, I still have that paper on the rest of it, so it's not going to get ruined. And I probably will use the rest of that on the next one. But I'll show you what it looks like when we get this screwed on here, how it just adds a little extra flair to the top of these shakers. So I'm just going to continue to put the rest of this on my little shakers. And now that we are done, this glitter actually came from the Dollar Tree. It's a big chunky glitter. It's not really fine, soft glitter. And I thought this would be pretty to put a little bit of this into the bottom of each of these shakers just to give it some more sparkle. Now I didn't fill them all the way. I just put, oh, I don't know, maybe a quarter in the bottom. And then waste not, want not, I'm just going to lift the paper up and dump the rest of this into my shaker. And then I'll put this back on and show you how it's looking even more sparkly and festive with that in there. And I'm just going to do that to the other 2 shakers. And now that that is done, I am going to take some Mod Podge, because these little white bottle brush trees, they're just plain old white. And because we're kind of going for sparkle and glam, I'm just going to rub some of that Mod Podge onto the very outer edges of the bristles. And you could do this with Elmer's glue. You probably could even do it with a glue stick. But look at this old glitter. I found it at the thrift store. And I mean, it is vintage and I love this and I use it sparingly. So I'm just going to shake it onto the Mod Podge that I put on the edge of the leaves, tap off the excess, and you can see there, it just gives a little shimmery sparkle to my trees. So I'm going to put a little dab of glue on the underside of the shaker lid, and then I'm going to put a little bit of glue on the underside around it once it is all the way through, and I'm just going to hold it in place until it's good and secured. And this is what they looked like when they were all done and put together. I just think they're so cute and very sparkly and very vintagey looking to me. So let me know what you think. I don't really have any Christmas stuff out for decorating yet. I guess I need to pull some out now that we're Christmas crafting, but here's what they look like. All right, before we move on, this video is part of the first of the month challenge, and of course it is July, and it is Christmas in July. It's always hosted by At Home with Gigi and Rustic and Lace DIY, and this month the guest host is Fidget DIYs. So be sure you go down into the description box and check out the links to their channels as well as the playlist. If you click that, it'll just continually feed all the videos of the other awesome creators who are participating in this challenge, and you'll get to see what they came up with. Now the second craft, we're going to kind of go to the opposite spectrum, a little more rustic-y looking with these corks. I was going to use this floating shelf from the Dollar Tree. Now just a heads up, stick with me because the very last craft is going to kind of be sparkly and vintagey again, and you're not going to believe what I made with just some cups from the Dollar Tree. So I'm going to cut the portion of the cork off that the corkscrew goes into because it gets a little bit damaged when that happens. So I'll just cut that off so I have a nice flush edge. And then I'm going to try, it's never perfect when you're cutting. This is just a steak knife and I'm just cutting on my craft table, and I'm cutting out little slices of each one of these about this thick. I don't even know how thick this was, but I mean, you can make it however thick you want if you want to create this. So I went and found a smaller frame and I cut them all to the size that I needed. And then this cork I cut just in half the long ways because that's going to be the trunk of my tree. So this craft is actually very simple and easy to make. Once you get all your pieces cut, you're just going to put on some hot glue, get your trunk put on down at the bottom. And then I'm going to take all the pieces for my first row. And I was laying them out here because I honestly couldn't remember how many pieces went on my first row when I first started doing it. And then I realized and took them back off. And then you'll see I'm kind of offsetting the two circles on either side of the trunk. And then I will put my remainder pieces on my first row. Now, the way I'm looking at it here, it kind of looks like it's a little lopsided, but it actually really isn't. And these pieces are not all the same thickness. I mean, if that really bothers you, then I guess you could find a way to really measure and cut them perfect. But I think it just kind of gives a little bit of depth and dimension to the tree when it's done as well. It's not like there's a huge difference, but just slightly. So we got the first row done, the second, now the third, we'll get the fourth, and now we are on our very final before we put the top on. And it's that easy to make a cute little cork Christmas tree. But I didn't want to stop there. I thought, you know what, let's make this just a green Christmas tree. So I took some of this green apple barrel paint and I'm just going to dab it onto the cork. I don't want all the pieces of the cork to be covered. And I'm just going to work my way all the way up to the top of the tree with this dark color. And then once this is dried, I wanted to give a little bit of depth and dimension to this, even more than the pieces not being exactly perfect. So I took my Waverly chalk paint in the color Moss, and I am going to just dabble a little bit on the top of that. And then once this dries, I decided that I wanted to put a little bit of my Antique Waverly wax on the trunk because that cork was looking just a little too blonde for me, and I wanted to look a little bit more like a Christmas tree. So I rubbed a little bit on here. And then I decided I would distress the edges a little bit, and it looks very dark when I first put it on, but I'm putting on with a damp paper towel, and then I'm going to take another damp paper towel, and I'm going to wipe the excess off so that it's just kind of a little bit of a faint distressed border, just to give it a little something else on there. I didn't know what else to do. I didn't really want to put jute twine around it or anything. But once I got that done, I decided that the trunk wasn't dark enough, so I put a little bit more on there, and I liked the color of that better. And here is how it ended up looking. And I apologize, it looks a little yellowish toned in the video. It's because the sun is shining through my blinds. But here is what it looks like with the 2 dimensions of the paint and the cork still showing through. I just think this is super sweet. You can see the width of the corks. There's all kinds of fun things you can do with corks, and I have some other ideas for some coming up. So stay tuned for that. But now we are going to move on to our third and final craft of the day, and this is what I got at the Dollar Tree. I found these little sparkly silver cups in the catering section. They were $2 for 6, which I thought was a little excessive, but that's Dollar Tree these days. Whoops. And I got these champagne corks at the thrift store, so I'm going to be using these as well. Now, the first thing that I wanted to do was take the corks, and I'm also using some Jingle Bells, and sorry, my camera's not focusing very well, but I painted them gold because I'm going to be making some bells, and I'm going to make them silver and gold. Now, I have this, this is actually a door hanging where you walk through this fringe, and it's silver and gold, and you can see here's the part that would hang up on the door. But I just use this for trim in a lot of my projects. So whenever I need a piece, I just snip it off and then start crafting away with it. I thought it would be cute to put a little bit of that trim up around the, it's going to be the top of the bell, but this is actually the base of the glass. There's a little kind of a slick ring around the base there. So I'm just going to measure off how much I need to put that around the base. And then I'm just going to use that as a measure to cut out 2 more pieces for my other 2. And I'm going to set those aside. And then I also wanted to put another layer around what will now be the bottom of the bell, but which is the top of the glass. So I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm going to wrap it around, measure it, and cut those out. And then it's just as simple as taking a little bit of hot glue and putting it on the rim there. Now, I was trying not to get that much hot glue on there to start, but I had just turned the glue gun on, and if you know, you know. It just seems like the first little bit that comes out is a bit of a blob. I probably should have just put it on a piece of paper. But I am just going to put 4 little dabs of glue in the beginning on each of the sides, and then a little smear when we get back to the point of the beginning, just to hold it in place. And sometimes I'm an all silver girl, sometimes gold. I've been more silver over the years. Last year I really was getting a little more into gold. But I actually, in some things, like the way the 2 of them looked together. And in this craft in particular, I liked the gold and the silver together. So let me know, are you silver, gold? Do you care? I'm kind of eclectic in everything, in my decor and in my crafting. But I'm just going to do the same thing on the bottom. I was just trying to make sure that I got my seams started in the same spot on the top as I did on the bottom. And I'll just work my way around with the glue and get that little sparkly trim put on there. And we do have this one thrift store in my town, which is where I get a lot of my crafting supplies. And I think they are the last holdout of the affordable thrift store because they always have stuff decently priced, and then they'll always have 50% off or really great sales on things. So anyway, that's where I got these corks too. I was just testing if the gold spray paint was dry, and it was. So I'm going to take and put a generous amount of hot glue, but not so much that will ooze out the edges because I don't want you to see the glue. And I'm going to stick it there on the bottom of the cup, which is now the top of the bell. And this will be the handle for the bell. And then for the underside, I am going to take a little piece of this sparkly trim again, and I'm going to attach it to the bell. Now, at first I was kind of hoping that I could string it through the bell, but the little opening wasn't big enough. So I went to plan B once I realized I couldn't get it through there, and I just put hot glue over the top, and then I glued it down onto place. And once that was all secured, then I wanted to measure just how far I needed that bell to hang down in my cup. But when I got to the top, I needed to add a little bit more length so that I could bend it over and glue it to the top of the cup or the top of the bell. So I'm going to put a little blob of hot glue. Get my stand out of the way there. And then I will just take that piece of trim, bend it over to this side like that when I get it down inside the cup, and put it over top of that hot glue. And you see how it's bent over on there, it's securing it into place. So now I will give you a better view of how this looks. Isn't that cute? I had never seen these cups at the Dollar Tree before, and I was just wandering around the other day looking at things, and I thought, oh my word, these would make the prettiest little silver bells for Christmas. So I'm just going to do that to the rest of these. And now that I have all of the bells put together, I went and got some of my screw eyes. I spray painted those gold as well because they were silver. And I'm going to take some more of that trim. And luckily, the holes on these screw hooks were large enough that I was able to eventually get the trim through there. And then I just pulled it up to the height that I wanted for my first bell. And then I cut it off. And then I am just taking it and wrapping it around my finger and doing a little slip knot. And if you've not done this kind of knot before, it is super easy and it is very effective and strong. So you'll just slip it through like you're tying a knot and grab hold of little end pieces like that and hold on to those tight. And then with your other thumb and finger, slip the knot up towards the top. And then when you get pretty close to the top, just slide it all the way up, and then it makes a nice secured little knot for you. So I am going to measure out the height. I'm going to do staggering heights for the top one and then the middle one, and so they're kind of off-centered a little bit. Now I just decided to do a very simple, almost like a breast cancer ribbon style bow for the top where all of the twine will hang together. And the reason why is I'm thinking I probably will hang this from a wreath or a garland or a swag or something at Christmas time once I get those put together. But for now, I just wanted to create a little hanger so that I could get this hung up. Then I cut a whole bunch of strands of that, tied a knot around it, glued it to the back of that bow. And then with one of the strands on the back of the bow, I'm going to take that and then I'm going to gather up the loops for my hanging bells. And then I'll take that little strand and slip it through all three of those hoops. I'm trying to decide which one would be the best. I wanted to get one that was towards the back there. And then I'm just going to tie that in a knot. I'll probably do 2 knots. And then this is what it looks like when it hangs up. And again, this is just a simple little bow just to get it hung up for now, but maybe Christmas time or as I get a swagger wreath in or something, I'll show how it looks attached to that. But aren't these sweet? They are just the simplest little thing out of little silver cups, jingle bells, some trim, and some champagne corks. So let me know what you thought of this one. I thought this was super fun, and this would even be a craft you could do with some young kids. So here is the wrap up. Again, here are the little salt and pepper shakers that we glitzed and glammed up. Put some little sparkle in our bottle brush trees and got those attached to that. Our cork tree where we just sliced some rounds of cork, and then the trunk one, we just did it in half. Put a little bit of dark green and some moss colored paint on there and distress the edges a little bit. And then lastly, again, our bells. So let me know if you had a favorite. I think the bells are my favorite by far, although I like the glitzy and glammy little salt and pepper shakers too. But I just wanted to thank you so much for hanging out with me. Don't forget to subscribe if you're not already. Share, give me a thumbs up. It helps my channel a lot. Thanks for hanging out with me on Christmas in July. See you next time.